Hi, in this video, I like to go over some things that are probably prior knowledge, but I just want to reiterate and get us up to speed because it may have been a long summer for some of us. So how about trying to get fractions and turn them into decimals? So for instance, 1/4, that's a fraction. How would we get that into a decimal? You divide the denominator into the numerator. So you would do 4 into 1, and 4 goes into 1 0 times. Bring down this 0, 4 goes into 10 twice, and then you get 0.25, which equals 1/4. You can also convert it back from a decimal into a fraction. So if you were given 0.25 and you need to convert that into a fraction, what you do is, if you can say it, then you can write it down. So 25 hundredths is how you would say that, which is equivalent to 25 over 100, 25 hundredths. Now what you'll have to do is reduce it. So always reduce any fraction that you have. 25 over 100, well, let's see, 25 and 100 have a common factor. That common factor is 25. So 25 goes into 25 once. 25 goes into 100 4 times. So then you can see that you can convert the decimal into a fraction. Another thing that I'd like us to do is mixed numbers. But before we get into mixed numbers, let me give a little pause and give you a chance to convert decimals to fractions and vice versa. Okay, so let's get into mixed numbers. Mixed numbers is where you have a whole number like this plus a fraction next to it. So 3 1/4 would be a mixed number. You can convert a mixed number into a improper fraction. Improper fraction is a fraction where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So 8/3 is an improper fraction because 8 is bigger than 3, and 8 is in the numerator, and 3 is the denominator. Now, to say improper fraction, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it at all. All it means is that the numerator is bigger than the denominator, and that's totally fine. You can leave fractions in their improper form. It is unfortunate that it's called improper because it's totally correct form. It's just showing that the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So how would you convert 3 1/4 into its improper fraction? You take the denominator, multiply it times the whole number. So 4 times 3 is 12. Then you add the numerator, 13, and then put it all over the original denominator. So 3 1/4 equals 13/4. The reason why that sort of trick works is because you could think of 3 1/4 as 3 plus 1/4. And do you remember how to add fractions or add a whole number in a fraction? First, you need to put the whole number into its fraction form. You can put any whole number over 1 to create its fraction version of itself. And whenever you're adding fractions, make sure to have the denominators be the same. So here, 1 and 4 are different. You need to come up with a common denominator. Common denominator between 1 and 4 is 4. So you could write both of these fractions with a denominator of 4. Now, 1/4 is unchanged, but to change 3 over 1 into a fraction where 4 is in the denominator, whatever you do to the bottom of a fraction, you have to do to the top. So whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. To get from 1 to 4, you multiply times 4. So if you multiply the denominator by 4, you likewise need to multiply the numerator by 4 in order for the fraction to keep its equivalence. So 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12. So now you have 12/4, which is another way of saying 3, plus 1/4. And whenever you add fractions, you keep the denominator and then add the numerator. So that's 13 over 4, which is exactly what we got before. This is a longer way, but this is why this shortcut works whenever you want to change a mixed number into an improper fraction. Okay. Why don't I give you a second to try that skill out, and then we'll be back right after this. All right, so why don't we change decimals into percents? Okay, so for decimals to percents, let's say that you have 0.30. This is a decimal. You could say it's 30 hundredths. So how do you convert this into a percentage? Percentage means out of 100. So remember, if you can say it, you can write it. So if you can say 30 hundredths, then you can write it as a fraction. So 30 hundredths. So this is how you convert this decimal into a fraction. Now, percentages means out of 100. So it means whatever this numerator is out of 100. So if this numerator is over 100, the numerator designates what that percentage is. So 30 out of 100 is 30%. So all of these are equivalent. 0.3 equals 30 hundredths equals 30%. They all mean the exact same thing. Okay, so why don't I give you a chance to convert a decimal into a percentage. I'll give you a quick hint on how to do it as a shortcut. Let's say you have 0.75 and you convert it into a decimal. It is a decimal, convert it into a percentage. What you could do is, of course, put 75 over 100, 75 hundredths. If you can say it, you can write it. And then 75 out of 100 is 75%. But here's a quick way that you can do it. Whenever you're converting a decimal into a percent, what you can do is take this decimal point and move it 2 places to the right. So if you take the decimal, move it 2 places to the right, what you get is 75 here. So that is how you convert all decimals into percentages. You need to do vice versa to create a decimal out of a percentage. So let's say that our percent is 85%. How do I get this into decimal form? Well, we do the reverse. We actually take this decimal point, which is implied to be right here, and we move it 2 places to the left. 1, 2. So 85% is the equivalent of 0.85 as a decimal. So let's give you a chance to convert percentages to decimals and vice versa. All right, and then the last thing I want to go over quickly is absolute value. Again, this is hopefully a skill that you've already done. I'm just reviewing it. Absolute value is shown with a symbol that's like 2 lines on either side of something. So then you'll have a number inside the lines. The set of lines on either side designates absolute value. So absolute value is the distance that a number is from 0 on the number line. Okay? So if you were to imagine a number line here, and 0 being here, and then you have -1, -2, -3, -4, and here you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So what is the distance from -4 to 0? Distance is always positive. You run 5 kilometers, you drive 50 miles. It doesn't make sense to talk about distance in the negative. So distance is always positive. So the distance from -4 to 0 is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 units that are positive because distance is always positive. So that means the absolute value of 4, meaning the distance, the absolute value of -4, meaning the distance of -4 to 0, is 4. In other words, a quick version, a shortcut, is to say whatever number is within the absolute value sign, you write the positive version of it. Okay, so here's the question. What if the positive version of the number is already within the absolute value sign? Well, then you just keep it. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay, the absolute value of 4 happens to be its opposite. Okay, so opposite means having the same quantity, but having an opposite sign. Okay, how about the absolute value of 0? That's kind of tricky. Well, the absolute value of 0, what is the distance from 0 to itself? 0. So the distance is 0, and the absolute value is 0. So short sort of a shortcut to say this is that the absolute value of a number is always the positive version of itself, and I'll give you a chance to try that skill out.